gets real hell. Without an education in your head, your whole life will be pure misery. You're better off dead. For there is simply no room in this whole wide world for an uneducated little boy or girl. Don't allow idle companions to lead you astray. To earn tomorrow, you got to learn today.
But with the internet today, Eli talks vintage calypso. Yeah, what I'm telling you, it's a serious topic, the direction that we're going in. You know, because what we want to see is not basically what the lies that we have learned. We can't be creating that same direction for education for the children. When it is the children going to be satisfied to understand and to really appreciate the value of nutrition, that 2 fig and an apple is a lot more nutritious with a glass of water than half the things that it tastes and the industrialized manufacturing and capturing of taste and food and the neurology of the human, right? It's something. So it's something else when we're looking at what really education is. Why the walls around the school, down the road, getting taller? The only other place you could graduate to is on Frederick Street. Eli talks vintage calypso. It's for years we're looking at what we construct as education basically, if it's just to create robots. But today we was hoping to see a governance, you know what I mean, from administration that not so creating the same psychosocial construct a dominance. So, in saying so, we're looking at the tomatoes this morning. I have some hoardings, I have my principle with it, right? It's some, thank you. It's some 6-inch BRC around it for urban floor space production kind of thing now, right? I like the idea of plants, but I like my vintage calypso because I feel, Eli, it's only about education. I mean, when we look at the amount of trees growing in the school down the road, that is on 3rd Avenue, right? We could bring out arborists, landscapers, foresters, right in the backyard. We should have a decorticated machine in Trinidad. We shouldn't be taking sides as some neighbor who move in, right? And then basically just trying to capture. No. Eli talks vintage calypso. What you want basically is to just stand for humanity. We're not accommodating the stupidity, right? So that's my position on that. I think we should be clearly advocating for why we standing for the human. That bullshit. You can't just keep selling everything. We don't want that to buy. You know what I mean? And it's time we start to educate the children to stop eating the food. Because the food creating that whole demand for the way you would call the importations. We lose taste, we lose our food, we importing the oil that we're using daily to supply our nutrition. We kill the coconut industry to do what? Import a manufactured product because somebody wanted to make some money. That bullshit, that era gone, it's at the internet now. Oh God, let me go up, we could Google. Right? So, when coming to this whole conversation about nutrition, I really and truly kind of in a position because, boy, you know what I'm telling you now. Education, we want education to be sustainable, regardless of what emergency or cataclysmic concern that we're actually preparing for based on a lot of the, galactic activities. If you're not in this conversation, you keep scrolling because this is vintage calypso. And we could go. But, you know what I'm telling you now, as our little nation, when we look at the precarious stupidity coming from the influences from the lies, the system was constructed on nipping the bud. And I from the 2 brothers who create all the banking and everything else like that. We need to be industrial, and we could simply do so just creeping into the conversation with some decorticating machine because we outside of the hurricane belt. I mean, we inside of the rainforest. We could actually be one of the little islands in the world that producing hemp. We could take a side and actually be the island of the world in the south that was predicted for, I mean, what did it call that? Prophetically, right? That could be the cause of some, I mean, I hate to admit it if that's the direction that we go in. Because we could go into creating the island that created the largest world war, wherever it is. That actually coincided with the magnetic pole flipping and the information being denied or not managed, right? So education failed in that direction because all it was constructed for was for capitalism to be basically where you would call it. I mean, where we reach now, where one person is just in dominance and the money and the control of the information. We are pharmacological, we take over food, and we expect the human to be appreciative of that kind of to be created that kind of food. With 35% prefrontal cortex, we as humans, we ain't accepting that. Because it's time we start to tell these manufacturers that experimenting with all these implementations based on all the money, if you stop buying, you don't even read the fucking label in the oh God, I guess yeah, but them fellas just goes, oh gosh, you can't. I mean, come on, you don't read the label in the grocery with all your education. So, where we really going in the spirit must come from within, and our objective reality should be not just the nation, but we could start there because we need to recognize our position on the planet. Right, we could do that, and probably that might be the greater ambition. But if we could start to just be in the national, and when we going to do something, we don't want that kind of following, we don't want that leadership, we don't want that direction for the population. At least not me. This is my position. I talking vintage, Eli. You have a leak in the road, that's a little more political. I mean, when politics reach down to a leak in the road, where we going? You know what I mean? Oh gosh, our nation, we should be, I mean, on top of this. And we shouldn't have external influences directing. Not when we outside of the hurricane belt. I mean, sharing two tectonic plates. We need to basically assert ourselves with a little more education, but not in that direction. We must represent a position. And this sustainable development that they're trying to construct, we could do that in every residence. We could build this nation together. We don't need that kind of governance. We don't need all, you see the idea of why it is the Christ was crucified? The Christ was crucified almost every time you look up, you see the crucified Gaddafi, they crucified Saddam Hussein, they crucified the fella in, the next fella now trying that thing in Philippines. You know, it's like, come on. These companies importing coke from since 19 how much or 15 how much, but then we calling it illegal. And it's just the pure lies and the deception nipping the bud. We start that in this cycle of civilization. But we in another cycle of civilization. We really and truly need to mature and to see if we could carry it a bit more, a bit different, right? If people are prepared to survive with what you would call it, out electrification or that kind of energy based on whatever cataclysmic concern we may obtain from the galaxies. Better we start to use ChatGPT to start to design the best non-electric products that we actually could. So that's my conversation. It might be vintage, but when coming to my position on education, I think the spirit are trying to earn from me writing a paragraph in a book and selling somebody it as a new edition. Right? The money grabbing, we as a little island with $1.4 million, that can't be the direction that we're going. We can't be preaching all boats rising. And then we're seeing the policies, right, that we want to implement. We don't mind the digitize, but it must always be for the benefit of the education and the speed of the learning for every given child. A telescope and a computer, we could use the electrification and the learning to see how far we could carry these islanders.